Welcome back to another day of Bible study as we are continuing on through our study of peace, looking at 32 different places in the Bible that mention peace. If you'd like to know more about who we are and what we do here at Christ Table, you can visit the URL that's right there the entire time, www.christstable.today. We're a ministry that is dedicated primarily to those who are disillusioned, disappointed, disconnected, or done with the church. But many people also find us as a secondary discipleship opportunity. And so we don't mind whatever reason you're here. We're thankful that you're here with us this morning. My name's Kevin, and I have the privilege of serving here at Christ Table as lead clergy. If you get over there to the website to find out more about us, I encourage you to sign up for the email list so that you will be the first person who is alerted to all of the things that are happening around Christ Table. Now, if you'd like to know more about this study in particular, what we're doing here, then you can visit the URL that is right there, go.christstable.today/peace. I know that I talk about that every time we come on here. People dip in, dip out of the studies. And so it's always just a great reminder that you can get free resources at that URL, a list of all the days of the study, as well as the Bible passages that are connected to it, and even a no strings attached, don't need an email address, anything, study guide that goes along with this study. Now, I will say that you can get a printed version of that PDF study guide. This doesn't happen for free here at Christ Table. We have bills to pay in order to be able to continue to do these things. And so getting these things, giving at Christ Table, but also getting our curriculum in print is helpful to us as well. As if you're able to do that, then we encourage you to do that. All you have to do is click on the button there at that URL that says get the box, and you'll get a box filled not just with the curriculum, but other spiritual resources that go along with this study. With our thanks, and we thank you for participating with us in that way. Go.christstable.today/peace. Now, one other thing, I know that I also have talked about this ad nauseum, but it has been amazing to hear the feedback from people who are finally getting through to read it. I know it's been out about a month now, 4 weeks, I think, and some people are readers, 1 or 2 days, you're through a book. Others, it takes a little bit more time to get through them. And so it's been fun to see that second wave of people finish the book. And if you have finished the book, I really would love for you to write a review, if you wouldn't mind, on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, honest review. Write the truth, whatever it is that you felt about the book. And I appreciate that a lot. That helps it get out there in front of other people. And it also lets me know what you experienced as you were reading it. And if you know of other people who might be able to utilize what is in this book, then I would encourage you to encourage them again. In fact, I think right now, if you're watching this live, when it airs, it is on discount on Amazon right now, I think by like 20%. So it's a great time to go ahead and pick up that resource. drkevinyoung.com, all the links are there. So encourage you to take care of that. Now, we are today back in the book of Proverbs with this study. Proverbs chapter 12, verses 20 and 21. Now, I will say that Proverbs is a collection of sayings, a bit like a pile of fortune cookies that have just kind of been laid in a pile. So most of what is in Proverbs is really kind of random and disconnected. There are multiple authors, at least probably 4 or 5 authors of Proverbs. And so, it's not really a narrative book. It's a collection of wise sayings, which is actually the definition of Proverbs. Peace is mentioned in there fairly regularly in there. It's one of the topics that is kind of attacked, that may not be the right word for peace, right? Peace is one of those topics that comes up rather often in the book of Proverbs, but the main thing about the book of Proverbs is the word wisdom. If there's one word that kind of rises to the surface in Proverbs, it is the word wisdom, which again kind of ties to this idea of Proverbs, wise sayings. So, in fact, wisdom becomes something of a character, even in the book of Proverbs, in some places, Lady Wisdom. What we don't have in the book of Proverbs is a deep doctrinal book that is a thus saith the Lord, kind of a paint by number. You do this and you do this and you're going to receive this. One kind of classic example of that is the verse that I learned in the King James Version. Train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Many parents have bash their heads against a wall, because even though they brought up their children well, when they got old, they still departed from that path and seemingly never came back. And they thought God had failed them. And so I think one of the things that we have to do at the outset of the book of Proverbs is kind of remind ourselves that whenever we're reading the book of Proverbs, this is good advice, wise sayings that work for most people in most situations. But it's not a book like Romans. It's not like the Gospels, where everything that is in here is written as a, kind of rub Buddha's belly, or rub the lamp, and you're going to get your wish in return for it. These are proverbs. These are wise sayings. These are things that hold more true rather than less true in life. And today we find ourselves in chapter 12, verses 20 and 21. So why don't we just go ahead and jump into it and get moving from there? Enough pontificating. Deceit fills hearts that are plotting evil. Evil is another one of those main topics in the book of Proverbs. Deceit fills hearts that are plotting evil, and joy fills hearts that are planning peace. Let's hit pause there for just a moment. Lots of P words. One of the things that we notice in the book of Proverbs, and I've kind of mentioned this whenever we've been in this book at several points in the past in this study, is that Proverbs tends to set up either ors, or this way or that way. You take this path or that path. You live in this direction or that direction. You become this type of person or you become that type of person. And so there's this like chasm of choice in between two things. And we see that here in this verse. Deceit fills hearts that are plotting evil, but joy fills hearts that are planning peace. And so we see this kind of dichotomy between those who are evil and those who are peaceful, between those that have deceit and between those that have joy. So maybe the question here is, what is filling the heart? If it's deceit, then it's definitely not someone who's planning for peace if they're practicing deceit. And if it's joy that someone is giving off out of their heart, then they're probably not somebody who is plotting evil or deceitful. And so, so often I try not to judge who is a follower of God and who is not a follower of God. But I tell you, one of the great and most foolproof ways to kind of get a temperature on where someone is in a healthy place with God or in a very unhealthy place, either with God or far away from God, is what does the fruit look like? And here, Proverbs gives us this duality between deceit and joy. Someone who's practicing deceit, probably not on the right path, right? But someone who's experiencing joy and it's overflowing out of them, quite the opposite. If we look at the Hebrew behind this, what's kind of being said here is that the wise one absorbs what is heard so it can be offered to others and the joy shared. This is what's kind of behind this idea of planning peace. That word there, that phrase, joy fills hearts that are planning peace, is kind of encouraging us to say that somebody who is wise, and there's the wisdom that's coming here because it's being spoken to people who are trying to find wisdom and to live in a wise way. The wise one absorbs what is heard so it can be offered to others and the joy shared. So the second verse that we have builds upon that and says, no harm comes to the godly, but the wicked have their fill of trouble. And again, we have this duality, right? The godly and the wicked. No harm comes to the godly, but the wicked will have their fill of trouble. So people who are deceitful, and that's spilling over out of their hearts, are going to be people who are probably more than likely plotting evil, and they're going to have their fill of trouble. But those whose hearts are planning peace, who are working for peace on behalf of others, those folks, no harm's going to come to them. Remember what I said about Proverbs being wisdom for most people in most instances, most times, but not always? This is one of those moments, right? Where this is the way the world is supposed to work and normally works, but it doesn't always work that way. These are Proverbs. Doesn't mean you just ignore it. Doesn't mean you just avoid it. It just means understand that sometimes you may be a joyful heart that plans peace, but harm in some way may come to you. What do we see here in this verse? Well, the joy of peace should bring with it, though, a freedom from fear. This is what happens, right? This is what's being said here in verse 21. Let's go back to it. No harm comes to the godly, but the wicked have their fill of trouble. Saying that when you are doing the right thing, whenever you are working towards peace and planning peace for other people and letting that invade you and your neighborhood and your neighbors and your relationships, whenever you're in that mindset and doing so joyfully, then that is going to bring with it this freedom from being afraid. I know that so many of us are afraid, and many of us I even see in today's world, if I can say this, are afraid of doing good, are afraid of being honest, are afraid of being vulnerable, are afraid of being compassionate, are afraid of being perceived as being weak. And so they might hide those fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, patience, meekness. I think I got all of them there. Rather than live out of them, put that tough exterior up instead of living authentically and vulnerably because of fear of who might take advantage, of people thinking wrongly of you. And unfortunately, oftentimes it's even Christians, right? Other followers of God who are treating you in those ways. So the joy of peace, though, should bring with it a freedom from fear. Even though life might not always go your way, even though that proverb might not always come true, that blessing might not be in the immediate, you're still going to have freedom from fear of the ramifications of those things when and if they happen. Now, the interesting thing here is that this section and these verses are kind of turning on circumstances rather than God. And this is something interesting that I kind of want to point out, especially in these sections of Scripture and in general, overall. What we see, and this may kind of rock your world, because this is not necessarily the way that we think of God or think of the Hebrew text or the text of the New Testament. But if you really kind of roll through the text and take account of each and every one, whenever God is, whenever something is being changed or something is being judged, God, or Yahweh, is almost never depicted as the active judge in Scripture. This is interesting. Pay attention to this. Yahweh, or God, is most often depicted as one who watches his intentions and desires work themselves out on the stage of human action. So often we have this kind of picture of God up there, an angry, vengeful God, in the old Hebrew, in the Old Testament, as we call it sometimes, or in the Hebrew text, and in the New Testament, we kind of see God as being up there, kind of pulling levers, or Jesus now is up there, kind of pulling the levers, like the Wizard of Oz. That's really not necessarily the way that the Bible most normally paints God and his will. Almost never depicted as the active judge, but almost always as the one who watches his intentions and desires work themselves out on the stage of human action. That God uses you, and that God utilizes others in order to bring to pass his ultimate will, which is for you and I to be well. A return to the Garden of Eden. Redemption of both humanity and the created world. Not just humans, but all of the 7 days of creation, right? All the 7 periods of creation. And so, peace. Peace lends us to a place where we can have freedom from fear. Fear oftentimes being the antagonist and the antithesis of peace. Knowing that God is not sitting up there ready to smote you, to judge you, that is not the way he normative acts in the world, should be a lot of comfort to those who have a fair amount of fear over every step. So I think that the Bible offers us, and this passage offers us, an invitation to be involved in the work and the intentions of God, to be living out the fruit of the Spirit, loving your neighbor, to be working towards the redemption of the world in living a true and abundant life that is an example of that peaceful world into which God invites all of us and desires for us to live. So, what is our activity for today? For those of you who have the study guide, either in PDF or in print, this is the one that's in there for today on day 21. For those of you who don't, grab a piece of paper or something today, and here you go. What is one thing that you could do at home to make the world a more peaceful place? I know it's pretty open-ended. Maybe it's the whole world. Maybe it's your neighborhood. Maybe it's your state. Whatever that means to you, what is one thing that you could do at home to make the world a more peaceful place? Well, it's been good to be with you today. Looking forward to being back with you tomorrow as we continue on through the peace study. Again, a reminder, if you'd like any of those study materials, there they are. Get my fingers lined up there. Right? go.christstable.today/peace. It's been good to be with you. Looking forward to being back next time as we continue on this